Good morning and welcome to question and answer series on the path of spiritual evolution. Today we are going to be discussing a very talked about topic that comes up frequently in our discussions. This topic is Atma Chintan, or knowing the Atma by Chintan, that is self-inquiry. Atma Chintan is a commonly used term, but what is its true meaning? Can one really do Chintan, that is thinking or analyzing or understanding of the Atma, the soul, by using the mind? The Atma, that is the soul or consciousness, is beyond the body, mind and intellect. However, the human process to collect and understand information is through the body, the mind and the intellect. Therefore, how can these three be able to comprehend the soul? The mind and intellect have the capacity to do thinking, but they cannot reach the Atma. If one says, I am thinking on Atma or Paramatma, then that thinking will be according to the thinker's mind, and therefore it will be Maic. The well-known philosopher Descartes noted, I think, therefore I am. This was the finality of the search René Descartes conducted for a statement that could not be doubted. He found that he could not doubt that he himself existed, as he was the one doing the doubting in the first place. The same question was raised by another well-known philosopher, J. Krishnamurti. He said, the observer is the observed. He also said, when you say, I must be free from all conditioning, I must experience, there is still the I, that is the center from which you are observing. Therefore, there is no way out, because there is always the center, the conclusion, the memory, a thing that is watching and saying, I must or I must not. Is there a state of the non-observer, a state in which there is no center from which you look? At the moment of actual pain there is no I. At the moment of tremendous joy there is no observer. The heavens are filled. You are part of it. There is bliss. This state takes place when the mind sees the falseness of attempts to become, to achieve. There is a state of timelessness only when there is no observer. Furthermore, the mind and the intellect are influenced by Maya, or made from Maya, or Prakruti, since they are formed as part of Prakruti, or creation. Alone, the mind and the intellect have no consciousness. They are also changeable. For example, we constantly change our minds about various subjects, and the way our intellect evolves as we gain new experiences and understanding. Thus, how can the mind and intellect that are changeable be able to comprehend the Atma, which is constant? If we believe that we have understood the Atma, consciousness, the soul, using our mind and intellect, we then bind the soul with the same constraints that bind the mind and intellect. We bring the Atma down to the level of the mind. This would mean that as the mind and intellect are changeable, so too is the Atma, or consciousness. Now, let us understand what is Atma Chintan, self-inquiry. According to the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, our bodies, mind and intellect are all part of creation, that itself is a part of Apara, or Prakruti. Apara itself consists of 8 parts, the 5 elements, that is Prithvi, Jar, Tej, Vayu, Akash, that means earth, water, fire, wind and space, as well as the Man, Buddhi and Ahankar, the mind, the intellect and the sense of self. Prakruti by its nature is Jar, that is, it has no consciousness. However, when Prakruti or Apara combines with Purush or Para, then creation occurs and the universe is formed. Purush is consciousness. Therefore, when Prakruti and Purush combine to form creation, the body, mind and intellect and senses feel live or conscious. This is because the power of consciousness that resides in Purush is activated in Prakruti, in the body, mind, intellect and senses. When the body, mind, intellect and senses gain consciousness, they become changeable. If they do not gain consciousness, then they remain gross matter, and conversely, if the Atma or consciousness does not combine with the body, mind, intellect and senses, then it does not have the power to experience anything. The reason we as humans are conscious and can experience life is because of the combination of the para and apara, or Purush and Prakriti. Therefore, the mind, that is the Antakaran, the Man, the Buddhi, the Chit, that is the memory, and the Ahamkar, the ego, has the ability to think because it gains consciousness from the Atma. However, this does not mean that the Atma is thinking. The Atma does not participate directly in any human process. It simply provides consciousness. Thus, the question arises again of how we are able to do Atma Chintan, that is self-inquiry of the soul or consciousness. How can one do Atma Chintan as the Atma is beyond the senses, the mind and the intellect? Our mind and intellect have a limitation on how truly they can understand the Atma. These two are simply using the power provided by the Atma. However, they cannot truly understand what the Atma is. In a previous video about the power of precedency, we discussed the topic of cause and effect based on the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, and the Vachanamrut. You can see the model on the screen. We talked about the five senses and how they helped us understand countless objects and experiences. With 2 eyes we can see countless objects, with 2 ears we can hear countless sounds, etc. However, these 5 senses provide input for only one mind. Thus, there are countless objects and experiences, but only 5 senses to experience them, and 5 senses, but only one mind to process the information. And going on, the mind can only process information based on what it receives from the 5 senses and from previous memory and experience. However, the intellect, that is the buddhi, has greater ability in that it has the ability to imagine and go further than the limitations of the mind. Furthermore, the intellect is the cause of the mind. So, what is the intellect dependent upon? The intellect is dependent upon the Jivatma, the individual self, which in turn is below the Mahat Tattva, the cosmic self. This cosmic self comes from Avyakta, that is Prakriti itself. These layers are explained in the Katha Upanishad as well as the Bhagavad Gita chapters 7, 9, 13 and 15, and also in the Vachanamrut Gadara Pratham 51 and Gadara Madhya 62. Therefore, when you look at the power of precedence, it is apparent that our mind and intellect are incapable of comprehending the true nature of Atma, the soul. However, our scriptures have showed us a good method to do Atma Chintan, self-inquiry, about how to think and know the Atma. We acknowledge the existence of an entity such as the Atma due to the simple fact that we are alive and conscious. This is because of the fact that this life force or consciousness is the result of the Atma. All of our daily thoughts and activities, which are constantly changing, are anatma, that is, not the Atma. Therefore, if we withdraw from these thoughts and activities, reducing them to nothingness, then automatically it will be as though we are realizing the soul. Our self-inquiry is clouded by the mundane thoughts and activities, and clearing these mundane thoughts will reveal the true knowledge and experience of the Atma itself. For example, it is hard to see the sun on a cloudy day, but as soon as the wind blows the clouds away, the sun is revealed. Similarly, the Atma takes the place of the sun, and the clouds are all the thoughts and activities that are clouding our realization of the Atma. This is why the topic is called self-inquiry, not soul-searching. We do not need to go looking for the Atma or understand the Atma by learning or thinking or analyzing. Rather, we need to gain realization of it from within. This is by self-inquiry. Our very base reality is the Atma itself. Thus, we have understood the nature of Atma Chintan, the process of self-inquiry of the soul. In the next episode, we will discuss more on the knowledge of the Atma as appearing in our scriptures. We will see how to use the mind and intellect to do the Atma Chintan, the self-inquiry.